What's up, people? And what you need, you can always subscribe, share. You can donate to my channel via Western Union MoneyGram. If you like this video, smash the like button. If you like this video, we're getting into a conversation that has something to do with a poll I put out concerning Sugar Ray Robinson and Charlie Burley. All right, so did Charlie Burley get ducked by Sugar Ray Robinson? All right, this is what I'm going to tell you guys. Stephen Breadman Edwards spoke about this. He said that, first of all, by the time Ray Robinson began his career, which was at lightweight, Charlie Burley was already fighting at middleweight. And Sugar Ray Robinson's career started in 1940. Charlie Burley had left welterweight by 1939. When Sugar Ray Robinson was fighting at welterweight, Charlie Burley was fighting at middleweight still. So even the idea that Sugar Ray Robinson ducked Charlie Burley is ridiculous. Then he talked about how Sugar Ray Robinson went through his entire welterweight career, moved up to middleweight, and won the middleweight championship in 1951, or late 1950, and that was the end of Charlie Burley's career. Charlie Burley's career ended in 1950. Which is true. It's 100% true. And so I can understand why Stephen Breadman Edwards would say that. And he is, if you guys don't know, he's the trainer and coach of Julian Williams, J. Rock Williams. However, it was Gainford who was Sugar Ray Robinson's manager, who was offered Charlie Burley to face Sugar Ray Robinson by Ray Arcel. And Gainford said this. He said, "We don't want Burley. We don't want Burley at all. Give us some other name, because his style was just a difficult style to match up against Sugar Ray Robinson." So how do we make sense about that? Robinson's fighting at welterweight. Burley's fighting at middleweight. When Robinson finally becomes middleweight champion of the world, Burley has retired. Burley was fighting at welterweight when Robinson wasn't even fighting. And by the time he left welterweight, Robinson was now beginning his career. So how does that make sense? And this is where I'm going to give you guys some facts that a lot of people overlook. Sugar Ray Robinson, in 1942 and onwards, up to 1950, which would have been the end of Charlie Burley's career, which is 8 years, also fought at middleweight while he was fighting at welterweight. In fact, he had a lot of middleweight fights, and he had 5 welterweight championship fights, maybe 5, 6, 7, okay, maybe 8, but all the rest were middleweight fights. So Sugar Ray Robinson was actually at that time fighting at middleweight between 1942 and 1950. He did not become middleweight champion of the world, beating Jake LaMotta, but he did become a certain version of the middleweight championship. He had a version of the middleweight championship, okay? He was fighting guys, all kinds of guys. Jose Basora, you name them, he was fighting them. He could have fought Charlie Burley then. So when Ray Arcel pitched that name, Charlie Burley, to Gainford, and Gainford turned it down, it was a duck. Okay? It was a duck. So, whereas Sugar Ray Robinson was welterweight world champion during that time, but most of his fights were fought above the 147-pound limit, which means it was middleweight fights. And Sugar Ray Robinson was filling out to be a very good middleweight, and Charlie Burley wasn't that big a middleweight anyway. Ray Robinson could have faced Charlie Burley then, and from what we learned in history, Charlie Burley's name came up. And Ray Robinson's manager turned it down for the reason that Charlie Burley was such a difficult opponent. Charlie Burley was one of Murderers Row. There was Holman Williams and a number of other guys. I want to make mention, though, that Sugar Ray Robinson did face Holly Mims, Henry, forgot his surname, and George Abrams. These are all good fighters. Okay? He had some tough fights and close fights with those guys. Those guys were not from Murderer's Row, but I would say Jose Basora was also a good fighter. These are all guys who were middleweights. All right? So I just wanted to make mention of that and clear the air. Yes, they did avoid Charlie Burley for the reason, specifically for the reason of Charlie Burley's style. It had nothing to do with Charlie Burley. So I have to correct Stephen Breadman, Stephen Breadman Edwards on that. He's wrong. That actually, Sugar Ray Robinson could have faced Charlie Burley and could have fought him. And Charlie Burley was actually presented to him, and Sugar Ray Robinson and his team turned it down. Just like our Gennady Golovkin turned down Demetrius Anthony. Just like our Canelo is looking at everybody but Demetrius Anthony. Just like how Roberto Duran turned down Mike McCallum. Thomas Hearns was avoided Mike McCallum. Okay? That's what it is. All right, guys. I'm going to catch you guys later. Peace. Don't forget you can subscribe, share, and donate to my channel. All right, Western Union Money Grant. Let me know if you want to donate. I'll see you guys later.